yeah. So what I've done is spent most of my working life as an arborist in Calgary. And I was always curious, always interested in what was going on with the trees. What bug is that? Why are those leaves that color? All those sorts of things. And you know, the years go by, the decades go by, and you know, we pick up a few tricks, a few, I don't know, secrets is probably too much, but you know, the information back in the day there was no internet when I was a young arborist, and it's just difficult to find the information. And what I've really done is just put a book together that, you know, is a core information that would really help working with Calgary's trees. Just the whole, you know, the common problems. We always get interesting things show up. If we have a weather fluctuation, if we have a very wet June, you'll see some strange funguses that you haven't seen for 10 years. And those are fun to know and to follow and to read about and learn about, but you know, it's not the actual core. So that's more what the book is about, is the most common, the common and hardy trees, their problems, insect and disease problems. And there's a whole bunch in the book about working with trees hands-on. I'll get into that in a second, but I just have a couple of notes and a few things I'd like to cover before I actually pick up the book and start speaking about it specifically. So just to say this book was written for you, and you, in my mind, is an informed, hands-on gardener, someone who wants to, you know, do things yourself. And if you're not able to do that, or you're not able to do that anymore, to certainly have the information so that you can guide that sort of work at your own property, understand what your contractor, your tree service contractor might be doing or suggesting, and you know, just being part of that so that your input is heard and it's very important. So that's what the book was for. The book is for informed gardeners. I guess, you know, starting arborists perhaps might take something from it. I do have a way of thinking about the book, and it is, you know, as I said, pre-internet days for me, for sure, when I got started. And this is the book that I wish I'd had to study when I was a young arborist, when I was a brand new arborist, and I didn't even know the names of the trees, let alone anything that could happen to them, any of the bugs that land on them and visit, sometimes with very little damage, sometimes, you know, a more stressed tree that's not fighting as it should. You know, what is happening to this tree? Sometimes you have to get to that level of away from health before, you know, the few diseases that we have here actually kick in. So anyways, this book is for hands-on people, and I hope that it gives you some knowledge and strength to either do the work yourselves or certainly, you know, ask the appropriate questions of contractors. And that was something that I wanted to give back. I've been an arborist, as Natasha said, since the 80s, and Calgary has treated me very well, and I've always had all the work I could do. And thank you. This book is for Calgary. Something about the tree service business. You know, there are times, and Natasha and I talked about this a moment just before we came on live, about, you know, the idea of two things, the trees themselves and what might be best for them, and then my tree business and what might be best for it, or not mine, but any other specific tree business. So if you get into a situation and your company grows and you're now offering a whole bunch of services, you know, you have a lot invested in your equipment, you have a team that's been trained, et cetera, and you want to see that return keep coming in from those insecticides, pesticides, and fertilizer applications. Many times, sometimes done unnecessarily. There are alternatives. If the tree, in a nutshell, any tree in Calgary that gets the water that it wants will be virtually pest-free. It will be strong. It will be healthy. It will be able to defend itself. It will look great. It will be full of beautiful green leaves. It will have very little deadwood, and it will have very little insect and or disease. That said, there are no 100%, and you can have the healthiest tree hit by certain things. You can have the most beautiful Mayday tree in town, and it's couldn't be any better, and you can still get black knot. So, you know, there are certain things that no matter what you do, they're going to get you. But I just have to say that, you know, before we kick in with all of these chemicals, and, you know, it's not those people out there. And we've probably, everybody's heard this probably too much, but it's you and it's me. And it's all the stuff we buy and all the plastics and all the packaging and everyone in town spraying their trees, and it all adds up. And if we can do something to reduce that a little bit, the world is probably already toxic enough. Okay, that's my environmental spiel. That's enough of that. So yeah, let's try and reduce our footprint. Let's water more, spend more on water, less on fertilizer, less on insecticides, and less on arborists. Okay, now the forest model. There are approximately 3 trillion trees on Earth, and almost all of them are in still naturally occurring forests. The urban forest is fascinating, and it's where we live, and it is something different. Trees have never really had to live with us like this before. We usually went to them. We've kind of brought them to us now. And the idea of the single tree standing by itself and not having any of its relatives, let's say, nearby is a very, very different approach. The way we modify our land, the way we scrape away all the wonderful soil that had accumulated here since the glaciers receded. You know, it's just a tough place to, it's a tough place to be a tree. So yeah, that forest model, everything we do with trees, if we can think about, for example, something that's really important right now is the pressure in Calgary, almost like a social pressure. It's like, you know, be a good neighbor, you know, clean up all those leaves, right? Those leaves, the trees downloaded a lot of the nutrients that were in the leaves prior to their fall, prior to the abscission and falling away from the tree. But there's still a lot of good stuff in those leaves. No one has ever cleaned up the leaves in the forest, and it would be a really good thing. What I would like to see people do is, well, of course, my place from that point of view is just a wreck. So I never clean up my leaves, but I don't have very much lawn either. So, but what I'd really like to do is, you know, if we've got to have that clean lawn thing come gardening season next year, is you know, let the leaves lie through the winter, through the rains, through the snow, through the freeze and the thaw, leaching out the last of the valuable nitrogen and all the other nutrients that are still in the leaf back into the soil. A lot of good reasons to do that. And the number one is back to that footprint. It's just a way to fertilize less. It was taken from the soil. Try and let some return. Okay, what's best for the tree? This again is a little bit about business. You know, I think when we're dealing with living things rather than commodities or materials or whatever it is in our lives, it's just a really, really good idea if you're dealing with a living thing to have that being trees' interests in the forefront. The health of the tree should supersede the health of the business, the health of the arborist, how much spraying, fertilizing, etc. goes on. So that makes a very, very good focus. When large corporate tree services get too far away from that, there's no one there with a passion for trees anymore, or there might be, but you don't see them very often. Those are the people that you want to have working with your trees. If your tree guy is kind of looking for you for direction, that almost might say that you understand more about the tree than he does. There's nothing wrong with that. It just depends what's going to happen. If you're taking a tree down, you know, understanding the intricate workings of liquid transport up and down in the trunk sort of falls by the wayside. That becomes information for people that are interested in living trees. So, you know, there's a vast separation I see in the arboriculture industry between preserving trees, killing trees, thinning trees, taking trees out that really do need to go. Excuse me. And also the maintenance of trees around, especially things like power lines and other structure that has to be protected. So anyhow, that's probably enough of that. This is the front cover of my tree book. There's just the top of it, and you can see it's all green with a nice picture in a tree canopy. And there's the top, and it says, "Your trees, what they want you to know." And so this is me speaking for the tree, really, and saying, I sure wish you knew all this stuff, because, you know, then, you know, like you're not bad to live with, but you know, there's always room for improvement, right? So you know, that was the model that I had in place when I wrote the book. Is your tree would ask you to know all these things for sure, as a minimum, and, you know, treat it as well as you can with that knowledge under your belt. A lot of you will know. There may be some new things here. I'll just go briefly over what's in here, rather than the format and or PowerPoint or whatever Natasha was talking about. I didn't do that because I was going to use the book itself as the presentation, and we won't spend a whole lot longer talking about it. I'm much more interested in what you have to say, what you've seen, what you've tried, what's happened in your garden. And I would like to spend most of our time this evening dealing with that. I'm actually getting pretty tired of this tree book, but we're not going to go there. So there's just a few chapters. There are 4, I believe. It's only a 150-page book. So the first one is a year in the life of your tree. And what this is basically about 15, 16 pages of the basic, you know, botany 10, how trees work, what are the names of their parts, and how those parts function. That's the anatomy, the physiology, and how we get to have the beautiful trees that we have and how they live their lives. Trees are very, very complicated. Their bodies are very much similar to our own, right down to a whole series of hormones, or in tree, a lot of times botanists would use the word growth regulators. But anyways, you know, trees are not just a simple life form. They are incredibly complex. So the first part of that was dormancy and spring wake up, which deals with the whole idea of the sleeping tree or the resting tree, let's say, because a tree is always working at a certain small idling level, let's say, and how that changes, how when winter finally fades and spring comes on, how the tree reacts to the lengthening of daylight and the increase of temperatures, and what happens. How do you take the tree that is actually stable and safe in dormancy, that can live through the most bizarre fluctuations, deep Arctic freezing cold, and survive and later, you know, leaf out again? It's a miracle, actually. So yeah, we deal with spring wake up and some discussion of buds, roots, and the relationship in the soil roots have with companion fungus called mycorrhizae. And then there's a little bit on how do we get the water from out of the soil to the very top of the tree and into the leaves. That's a liquid transport upward. And how do we get the sugars produced in the leaves in that water put back and through the branch, through the trunk, and down to the farthest extreme, the finest root hair tips that are smaller than our own hairs, and this beautiful exchange that is called liquid transport. It's a fascinating set of processes. And then there's a little bit of discussion on secondary growth. Secondary growth is, as most of you would know, is how a tree actually gets wider, bigger, thicker, stronger, able to support the great leaf mass above. And then we have some discussion on defense. All living things are under attack all the time. And, you know, we've seen this brutally portrayed as in the human world in the last year and a half as COVID moves through our elderly population, people with chronic health problems and other issues that, you know, do not give them the power sometimes to fight back. And this exact same thing happens with trees. And, you know, without the ability on a very advanced level sometimes, being able to defend themselves, there really wouldn't be any trees. The defense system of trees are fascinating. This was a tremendous amount of work was done by my teacher, Dr. Alex Shigo, when he came up with the acronym that goes like CODIT, the compartmentalization of decay in trees. Fascinating study. And Dr. Shigo spent nearly his whole working life coming up with the beautiful principles that function inside all living trees and how CODIT functions and how the defense systems are so powerful and amazing. And then we deal with, as we get into later on in the year, into the summer, and then shutting down as fall, and then later winter come, what happens to the leaves, the whole process that finally, where the leaf, they're so powerfully attached with the petiole as their own little stem that attaches to the twig. And it's almost like a docking clamp sort of thing. They're just powerfully locked together. And at one point, at some point when the leaf is, the tree has taken what it can, all the sugars and available nutrients, the rest of the ions that are still in there, the 14 essential elements that trees use all the time for their life processes are always in an ionic form in the life of the tree. So yeah, that's the botany class. That's chapter 1 in the book. Chapter 2 is the hands-on stuff. So a little easier to relate to. And of course, this is outside and we have our gloves on and our boots and hats, and it's all fun being outside, getting dressed for work and doing the work. And so I talk a little bit again about how a little continuation of how trees grow, measuring annual growth through the incremental bud scars, marks that are left in the bark on the twigs that positively and truthfully show you how your tree is doing. Did it grow 2 inches? Did it grow 8? Did it grow 16? What kind of year did you have? And that is all right there written in every branch on your tree. And then I move into some tree architecture. Again, Dr. Shigo's work was just powerful and complete when he brought up and dealt with the whole concept of the branch collar, where the branches are actually attached to the tree, how they are attached, and where they come from and where they are naturally meant to come off. That is called natural target pruning. So there's a little bit on that. A condition called included bark, codominance, when we have 2 tight stems like this growing together, and what happens in between there and why one can sometimes split off and why is that weak. That is dealt with in here. The ideas of repairing trees that are either cracked or are going to or already have and can still be saved with the addition of mechanical hardware installed in the tree. Then there's a little bit on hardiness zones, where we are on this northern reach that we found here, how cold and significant this place is, what will grow here, what won't. I spent some time talking about soils. Urban soils are like nothing in nature. All of the beautiful soil that had accumulated here for over 10,000 years since the glaciers receded is gone. And it's the first thing, it's the first victim, let's say, of a new construction of a new district. And all of that really wonderful, good black loess is piled away and sold back to you by the cupful. and the whole neighborhood is scraped down into the underlying clay level, which is inert and plants have no use for it. And then everything that happens in the neighborhood is installed, the drains and the power lines and everything, making sure that the neighborhood, drains well. We don't want anybody's basement full of water. And at that point, then the houses are finished and we put a little bit of black soil back on top. And all the plants that we have, our lawns, our trees, our shrubs, our flowers, everything competes and competes strongly sometimes in that marginal layer of upper black, hopefully black loam, or there's many names for it, but that's a good name: topsoil, black loam. In fact, just to talk about soils for just 1 second, the tree's whole life, everything that's either going to be good or not good in a tree's life is all about soil. If the soil is good or okay, then your tree will be good or okay. If you have very thin soil, if you have very poor quality soil, if there's a lot of clay in that soil, you're going to have to work hard to have a really nice, big, strong, healthy tree. This is absolutely completely different from undisturbed natural soil zones. This is the strongest factor that affects how the urban tree grows. I can't overstate how important it is. If you were lucky enough to buy a brand new house that has, maybe there's just grass there and a couple of little trees, do some digging, find out what you've got, and make the call and get the trucks in there and increase that soil zone as much as you can. If you've got 6-8 inches at a foot, if you could possibly do that. The problem is when we buy a house that's already 40 years old and existing trees and existing garden and such, there's no possible way you can do that kind of soil amendment. So that's a real amazing place for brand new homeowners to really boost their soil zone. Another thing about Calgary's gardens is that every single one of them is different. Because it's all private property, and what happened? Did the developer do this? These people didn't add anything. These 2 owners in a row through a period of 15 years or whatever added all kinds of soil, did all sorts of things to make that soil zone as strong and rich and supportive as possible for the trees and other plants that they wanted to grow. Everything that happens with plants starts in the soil. If you don't have a healthy, happy, functioning, exploring, growing root system every year, that's what the roots do. It's like, where's the water this year? Will you guys go over here? No, I'm going over this way. I can smell water. And it's fascinating to think of the root system like this little crew of workers. And it's like, boy, oh boy, I found magnesium today. I even got a little sulfur in. And it's just a fascinating thing. There's a tremendous amount of root growth every year too. A lot of the non-woody roots are very seasonal. And so the root system is very, very alive and powerful. We tend to just stand on it, walk over it, never even notice it. It's almost static in that sort of sense, but it's not. It is what everything that plants have comes from. So anyways, that is a lot about soil. Sorry about that. And then there's a section on planting, which again is full of endless small detail. Just knowing where to plant your tree, picking the right species. Do we have enough room for this? How does this fit in here? Are we going to, like most Calgarians, have to shift our garden over from a full sun to a shade garden later on? What's going to happen with that? So, and then I get into some work on the pruning, natural target pruning, and where to make the cuts. And there's all sorts of pictures and diagrams in here. The tree's reaction to pruning, gauging the quality of your pruning cuts. The tree will mark your work. Absolutely. It's like that strict teacher that made sure you crossed your I's and dotted your T's. And when should a tree be removed? What goes up? So yeah, that's most of the hands-on. Chapter 3 is an inventory all the way from ash to willows and everything in between. Most of the best trees that grow in Calgary Just a few highlights would be, ash, burning bush, some of the cherry trees, section on conifers, pine problems, cranberries, currants, dogwoods, and on through elms, flowering crabapples, forsythia, maples, nine bark. I'm just skipping through, just showing you the alphabetical arrangement of the major genus of trees in Calgary that I've dealt with in here. And then chapter 4 is just a conclusion and just some ideas about what it is to possibly bond with your own trees, spend time with trees, doing nothing else other than maybe just having a cup of tea and just hanging out. So anyhow, that's probably enough of that, Natasha. It's